Thank you, Dr. Raska. I'm interested in your views on the implications for Singapore, which you refer to in your paper. I mean, you talk about asymmetric warfare and information or disinformation campaigns being part of asymmetric warfare. What in your view are the implications when, say, I mean, a lot of people accept that Singapore's military power is substantial, that it is able to defend itself. So given that, what do you think would be the attractiveness of using asymmetric warfare, disinformation campaigns against Singapore by a country that feels that it is not militarily able to challenge Singapore?
That's an excellent question. In a way, Singapore's deterrence and defense capabilities are second to none in the region. Singapore has the strategic edge and always had been in terms of a conventional military power. But again, these type of the changing character of conflict invites asymmetric type of strategies that may offset anyone's military inferiority and achieve similar political outcomes, right? So think about ways to bypass that power projection capabilities, right? And that is the key point that I mentioned in the paper, in a way that cyber-enabled information conflicts essentially challenge Singapore concepts of deterrence, right? The different levels of potential attacks short of war preclude Singapore's capability, preclude Singapore's military type of action, right? So in other words, if Singapore is hit by cyber and information type of attack in conjunction with a terrorist attack, right? How does Singapore deter them in the first place? And how does Singapore respond with them, militarily? And particularly if these attacks can happen far away from places that conventional reach is not viable.
Right. So if you, for example, wanted to attack Singapore, weaken Singapore, but you do not think you can do it through military means in the first place, the logical conclusion is that you must first engage in information warfare. Correct?
That's correct. In a way, in a subtle information type of campaign, gradual, that would, again, identify the society's friction points, the political friction points that create tensions. And these points are any issues that either put specific groups together or they put specific groups apart, right? And so once you have done that, then you can essentially from outside tailor specific communication towards Singapore. I always, whenever listen to Singapore's media, I think there's a sense in Singapore of type of invulnerability toward these type of threats, because Singapore is so small, it can basically block any sort of external foreign media interference. It can basically identify these type of attacks. And I believe that this is not necessarily correct, because that type of crisis doesn't have to necessarily come from within Singapore, but Singapore can be drawn into crisis outside, externally, where Singapore's reputation, Singapore's credibility, whether economic, financial, any sort of issue that would threaten sort of Singapore's international standing could be challenged.
And you mentioned the divisions and friction points. Apart from political divisions, the other obvious division points to exploit in the Southeast Asian context are the racial and religious division points. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. Singapore is very multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. And it's a very unique place in a way that nowhere else in the world has been some sort of that type of cohesion. And that type of cohesion is, of course, very fragile. And I'm not expert into religious issues, and you will have testimony from others. But certainly these themes can create certain effects, and are very sensitive.
So logically, if you're a military strategist sitting outside of Singapore and looking at Singapore, in fact, using deliberate falsehoods, targeting at the divisions as a way of weakening Singapore and undermining Singapore's will to defend itself should in fact precede any other kind of action that one would take.
That would be the assumption, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank you, Dr. Raska, for taking time to participate and contribute to the Select Committee's process. Within the next few days, we'll send you a transcript of today's proceedings. Please go through it, and if there are any minor amendments, please make the corrections and send it back to us. Thank you once again. Sergeant at Arms, please accompany us.
I would also like to thank you for taking it for the honor to be here and to share my views. Thank you very much.